I'm John Wilson. Welcome to Owned and Operated. Twice a week, we talk about home service businesses, and if you're a home service entrepreneur, then this is going to be the show for you. We talk about our own business in residential plumbing, HVAC, and electric, and we also talk about business models that we just find interesting. Let's get into it. Hey, so just give me your email. Every Friday, we drop a newsletter from Owned and Operated called Weekly Insights. And inside that newsletter, we talk about our business, we talk about lessons learned, we talk about projects that we're working on. So go to ownedandoperated.com, enter your email, and get some drops every Friday. Welcome back to Owned and Operated.
To Owned and Operated.
Yeah. We've got Rich Jordan here for a second appearance. Welcome back, Rich.
Hey, Rich.
Good to have you. If you're listening for the first time, check out the last episode, or Rich has showed up on the pod a couple times now. He's got an awesome origin story, and we're excited to be talking to him. So today, what we're going to be talking about, the last one we were talking about sort of like surviving and thriving in shoulder season. And like, you know, we're both sort of feeling that right now. And what I thought would be what kept crossing my mind as we were having that conversation, and what I'm feeling currently in our business is Mike Botkin did a tweet like a week ago, a couple days ago. And he was like, hey, what's the real business you're in? Like, what's the one thing that if you do right, your business like drives profit? And Chris Hoffman's response was HVAC install, which I would not have said was my response until about 2 weeks ago when HVAC install dropped off like a cliff. And then I'm like, okay, I think I can get this now. Because yeah. Well, not even the install business, but specifically the HVAC install business. And I'll start it with like, we're still really new to HVAC being like a meaningful part of our business. Like that is a last 6 months problem. And there's been so many other moving pieces and parts. We just haven't really like dove in, and we get better at it every day. But HVAC in general, like plumbing has always been the big gorilla for our business. And it still is, but like that gap is shrinking. Whereas like now, you know, plumbing might do 800,000-900,000 in a month, and HVAC used to do 2 to 3, and now it's doing like 6 to 7. Like I think we hit 750 in January. So like it's creeping up good. And the hard thing for us to deal with as we think about like growing the business and investing and marketing is plumbing is pretty predictable. Like I can count on that 800,000 a month or 700,000 a month. Like I just, you know, we're going to work hard and we're going to get it done. We might miss a little bit here and there. But HVAC install is not predictable. And some of the areas that we really failed at this year was one, shoulder season and like selling through that. And we failed the entire year on gross margin in HVAC install. And we just got absolutely smoked with material costs and bad promotions and bad discounts and selling practices and all these different things that ended up just totally kicking our butt in gross margin. So I was thinking about that last time as we were talking about this, because it kept going back to like really at this point in our business, electric's roughly going to produce what electric's going to produce. HVAC's or plumbing's going to produce what plumbing's going to produce, and those are pretty predictable. And now the big mover of whether or not we're profitable is HVAC install, because that's the only thing that like we don't really know what's going to happen. Like it's not predictable enough yet. So is that something that you guys feel too?
I mean, I'd say I might push back on just the use of predictable there, because I think it is predictable if you are extremely deliberate about the inputs, right? Like very deliberate about the service board being full, very deliberate about how you're stacking the service board, the percentage of those that you're flipping to replacement, what your close rate is on those replacements, your average ticket, right? So like you actually can, based on your volume of service, you can reasonably predict where those installs are going to land. But the problem is like you have to execute in every step of that funnel. And that's where it's really hard.
Yeah, I think you were the first one that I've ever seen when I got into HVAC, Rich, that your shoulder season was smoothed out. I thought what most HVAC owners think is just, hey, you have your peak season and then you have your shoulder season, and it's going to be relatively half or a quarter of whatever you do in the summer. And then I saw your graph and I went, oh my gosh, this is absolutely mind-blowing, because it wasn't like that. It was relatively smooth with very light dips. So I mean that's where we in our company killed that culture of shoulder season is going to be terrible. We just need to do the right things to make it so that it's
the
not.
hard part, and John and I were just talking about this on the last episode, is like the hard part can be those installs sometimes. So we do a lot of work to keep service just steady throughout the year. And really it's the maintenances that do that for us. And then we try to be really strategic about how we're stacking those maintenances to make sure we're like increasing the probability that we're still going to be flipping to replacement even in the shoulder season. But usually like we'll see close rates on sales can really fall through the floor sometimes when that need isn't there. So that's something we're still solving for. But a lot of that variation that we still do see comes from installs dropping. And we're really still solving for that.
And so is that a deliberate move in the busy season to data collect? Like you say that you're trying to strategically place those older units, R22 units, kind of those maintenances in the worst months so that you can dictate a certain percentage of flips, right? So then, but how are you tracking those throughout the rest of the year? Because in my mind, you have to get that information first, right?
We're just like really militant about that with the team. It's like constant reminders. So like we got to be getting equipment data. We do use a tool that John put me onto. Founder of this startup has become a friend, Alex Coleman. He runs a company called Faraday. And for us, like our technicians can just take a picture of the data plate on a piece of equipment, and Faraday will pull all that data out and input into Service Titan as equipment data with all the ages and the warranties and all that stuff. And then for us, like the reports that we pull that populate our dashboards, pulls that equipment age and data as well, so that we can see like what percentage of our board is aged equipment. And then we manage to that.
Yeah. So, I mean, back to the original question then, do you agree with John? I think that you said you push back on certain phrasing that he gave, but do you believe the same idea as John, that what your one idea in your business is the HVAC installs, or do you have another feeling there?
I saw that tweet too, and I didn't respond because I was I was scratching my head on it. But I will concede that like when HVAC installs fall through the floor, people get stressed out around here. Like that is true.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's also the most likely to fall through the floor, like at least from our perspective. Like plumbing installs falling through the floor, and maybe a different way to take this is like install in general. I just thought it was interesting that he was very specific about HVAC. I should just ask him what he meant, but like,
I mean, I totally see why he would feel it.
Like if our total cost structure is based on everyone firing at all cylinders, like HVAC install is the one that's going to drop off in just because of season. Like plumbing, I think had a record sales month in April. Like we're about to clear our first $1 million month in just plumbing, which is insane. Like
Hey, yo.
that's just plumbing.
Congrats,
That's like
man.
crazy to us. But like the loss of HVAC installs like didn't balance it out. Like the loss of HVAC installs was like we sold half.
Well, I think it's
think
this idea
of our last
it's
couple
this
months.
idea of like there's kind of like
John,
a whiplash effect, right? Where like the tail of the whip moves much further than the pommel of the whip. So like if like a couple variables are off in service or dispatch or close rate, and now like that install whip is going to be way off, and I think that's what we all feel is like, all right, well, I didn't stack the board with enough aged equipment. My technicians like didn't offer enough options or didn't educate the homeowner, didn't flip at the correct percentage, and now my installs are off by $300,000 this month. It's like, whoa.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's this idea of like it is predictable. It's just volatile if you miss any of these little variables throughout the journey.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, do you guys also find that the HVAC industry in general, I mean, it runs on tighter margins, tighter gross margin, tighter net margin. So the resources that you put in, if you miss on that number, are more catastrophic to the business as a whole because you have to spend more in that.
Totally.
So, I mean, that's kind of what we
find. It's just like, hey, if we misprice an equipment, we mispriced it on 10 jobs and we lost and we didn't lose small. So like we really, and that's been our journey with HVAC installs. Like as we're dialing it in, like plumbing gross margin is pretty consistent. Electric gross margin is pretty consistent. They might not be good consistent, but like there's not like a 10 to 20 point swing, but like we'll have a 10 to 20 point swing in HVAC, like depending on the month with gross margin. And I really think like, I think probably that's the point I'm trying to drive is I think about this a lot because I think about gross margin stability and like our gross margin isn't as stable as it should be for exactly this reason. Right. And when I think about like, how do we get to the next level? The reality is we can't until gross margin gets stable because you can't confidently invest into the next line of infrastructure and you can't confidently invest into like $2 million of marketing or like more fleet or whatever it is until your gross margin is like rock solid. Like you always know that you're going to cover the nut. Like OpEx, I can get being weird because you're investing, you're hiring, you're, whatever. But like gross margin has to be what gross margin needs to be. And and we miss that still. And I think and we miss it because of HVAC install.
How do you line that out?
What do you mean?
I mean, like, so you're saying that, and I mean, we have this problem. So this is not something that I've solved either, is you have giant swings in gross margin depending on seasonality, depending on just the majority, environment, the market itself, price increases. So what are you doing specifically to solve that problem if HVAC install is the one thing that you need to do right?
Yeah, I think like what do commissions look like? What do material expenses look like? Are we job costing before the job starts? Because that's been a big problem is we're finding out we lost money after we did it. And it's like we knew all the inputs prior. Like why didn't we just, look at them before we installed it and maybe put a secondary line of equipment or something? Which type of equipment we're putting in, pack out kits has been a big part. Like, can we shave off 5 points of cost with pack out kits? How do we think about financing vendors and like what that financing package costs us? Like we've gone through the whole board of like top to bottom of like flat rate install. Cause we're really like, we can't scale this department until gross margin is exactly what gross margin needs to be. Cause it all over the board doesn't help us at all. Like it has to be perfect. Otherwise, the HVAC never gets to 30 million because like you can't have a volatile 30 million. It'd be a nightmare.
Yeah, just think about how impactful it would be for your business if you had dialed in gross margins on one of the largest revenue areas of your business. It's something
Yeah. Well, so everyone that I've talked to, and the reason this is a focus is aside from that tweet, everyone that I've talked to above 50 million, their gross margin is dialed. Like Like when I said shoulder season, I was like, yeah, we took like a 15-point swing on gross margin. And the person I was talking to said like they had a tough quarter one for HVAC install and they took a 2-point swing. And that was their version of tough. And I was like, what am I missing? Like, what am I missing that a 2-point swing? And like, what did you do to just make it a 2-point swing and not 15? Like, that's kind of wild.
Yeah,
do you swing that much, Rich?
We do. Gross margin has been like it's like my white whale over here in Newark. So in New Jersey, we're predominantly plumbing business with a smaller HVAC arm. TJ, my partner who runs the New Jersey business, has like gross margin dialed in. He's like high 50s, even 60 every single month, regardless of where revenue falls. New Hampshire's like it's all over the place. We're chasing our tail on some things. First was materials percentage, so we're adjusting pricing. Then it's labor. Then it's financing, and then it's materials again. But it's because of inefficient use of kits or poor warranty return process or whatever. So.
Are you currently dumping money into the PPC pit of despair? Well, that's how I used to feel before I started working with service scalers. I would waste money with 2, 3, 4 other agencies. Then I started working with service scalers and they were able to drive meaningful leads in my business. And now it's one of our cheapest paid lead generation platforms. They specialize in PPC, SEO, and LSA management. So if you're looking to increase meaningful leads in any of those areas, I would give them a shout out and see what they can do for you. I know we're switching topics here midstream, but we picked up that business that you sent over to me. It's small world, and it's been almost 2 months. We're around in that 50-day mark, and it's been great. But at the same time, I mean, the headache with acquisitions and new vertical, because we had a plumbing side, but it just wasn't. It was one guy. It was a chuck in the truck style. And now we're like, hey, plumbing should be bigger than our HVAC side. We should do $2 million this year on plumbing alone, which we weren't doing on HVAC last year. So interesting turn of events. But we had a killer month. We're finally on track for $5 million.
That's a big growth shot for you, though. That's like, because that's a real journey from where you were to where you are. So I imagine the last couple of months were brutal, probably.
Last year, and we had an installer come back to us the other day who's working for us again. And last year when he worked for us, we were working out of a storage unit. Like the change in where we were a year ago with 3 guys to today with 16, 17 people on board is just, night and day.
Yeah.
But also giant headache. You know how it is. I mean, I can't even imagine running two separate locations. So how does that work? I've shut down a deal because it was too far away, but yet you have a deal or a whole another business.
Different brand. Yeah.
It's a different brand.
It's our original
correct?
Business. So
different brand.
The really simple, a longer answer would be, we tried to do like shared services for a while. Shared call center, shared, every back office function, like every non-COGS function, like was pretty much shared outside of leadership. And we found that at our size, which at the time was like basically 3 million and 3 million were the two businesses at the time. This is 2 years ago. Just didn't work. It's like really hard. You just don't have the resources to like do a good job with shared services for both businesses. So it's like, it's just shitty.
I was just going to ask that because I think Hoffman, I can't even pronounce the German or Dutch name of his holding company, Deschutman or something like that, Deutschman. They are, I saw his tweet the other day that was saying that they're doing potentially looking at buying businesses with shared services as a background. So do you think that it was a resource issue? You guys just didn't have the resources in place to be able to do it correctly? Or do you think that there's an innate issue with running kind of a shared service department?
I think it's a little bit of both. I mean, it's certainly a resource problem. That's definitely what it was for us. Now, at Chris's size, he does have a lot more resources to put in the shared services, so I think he can do it well. I mean, I think it's still really hard to do well, though. I think Hoffman's like totally postured to do it well, but it's like it's hard to do well. Culture conflicts, market differences, brand differences. I think you have to force. I think like they'll find that they have to force like a lot of consistency. If you're going to do a shared call center, for instance, like consistency in the dispatch fees, consistency in like how you handle certain issues and after hours, and it's like if you're doing things differently and you have the same CSR picking up for it's as simple as like it's just confusion.
Yeah, we get that a lot. I get the question like, hey, can you run that? And I always say, no, I don't think you guys should even dream about that because it's just so far off in terms of, right, our market that we were looking at was 2 hours away. But in that market, you can't run the same price and you can't run the same style on something that's even just geographically fairly close on the grand scheme, but just vastly different markets.
I wouldn't recommend it to people.
Interesting.
For us, the reason it works for us now is because we tried the shared services, it didn't work, and then we said, screw it, like separate it completely. And then once we did that, both businesses took off. Like we were kind of like stagnating with this like shared services with a lot of friction. Remove that. TJ, my partner, and this is the secret sauce that, my partner runs Guarantee in New Jersey. I run Sanford, New Hampshire, and then he and I both oversee, strategy and ownership level stuff, right? But both businesses took off after that because like, all right, now we have like focused, dedicated resources and leadership at both locations. And then we share best practices between the two.
And with TJ, have you told the story on here of where you met him and how you met him and what he was doing? Because I think that's a great question that we get a lot as well in regards to finding your unicorn partner who's a great operator who you can trust and who does a decent job. I mean, I have one I work with. Obviously, John has Brandon who he works with. You have TJ who you work with.
No, I haven't.
Have you told that story on here?
Anywhere. I mean, for us, it's pretty simple. Like TJ and I basically lived together all 4 years in college. He's one of my best friends. Super smart guy, mechanical engineer, worked in like heavy maritime construction in his 20s when I was in the Marine Corps. We stayed in touch, both kind of like ambitious, enterprising guys, so as we were kind of ideating what we wanted to do, and I was leaving the Marine Corps trying to like really about to take a step. I had kind of like read, Bo Burlingham's Small Giants and kind of went down the small business rabbit hole and, kind of talking to him over beers over the course of 2 years leading up to it. And we were like, hey, let's do it. And Guarantee Plumbing happened to be like where he grew up in his backyard. So it all kind of worked out and we did that together. And then we've grown this whole thing together. So.
That's neat. Yeah, I mean, it's such a hard, it doesn't sound like it was overly difficult for you to do, but I know that on the market, that they're a unicorn of sorts to try and find someone who can trust, who can really run a business like that. That's neat. I only become more and more
appreciative of my partnership with TJ as I hear like the horror stories of other people. It's just really unfortunate. And I think it's really easy to fall into that. I have a joke with TJ is that like the best partnerships and our partnership is built on this foundation of mutual guilt, like mutual perceived guilt. And it's that each partner feels like they're getting the better end of the deal, you know? So it's totally true in our partnership. Like I do a lot of travel because I'm coming up here to New Hampshire all the time and have certainly like fought a lot of fires up here in New Hampshire. But while I was doing that, like TJ was fighting his own fires with a significantly smaller business in New Jersey. Big talent issue last year that he had to fight through and basically rebuild and all this stuff. So I'm like, thank God for TJ down there. Shared guilt. I think that's the foundation of a strong partnership right there.
Mutually perceived guilt. You just feel too guilty that you need to, that they're having too much trouble and you need to perform to help them out. I love that. I mean, I think that's a feeling that we all internalize, and that's definitely how I feel as well. Like there's a guilt that, hey, they're running operations, so I need to perform on this specific aspect or on creating this program the correct way, so that they can worry about operations and just implement. So that's super interesting. And so you recently acquired you recently acquired this new business, right? What are your next steps? Because let me preface this by saying, so in my mind, we are working on a deal currently where we will potentially get close to that 10 million mark if it closes. And then the goal after that, and I think John has mentioned this before as well, is that after a certain point, there's really less value in the acquisition itself because you're really just buying the customer list, and then it's really focused on that organic growth. Do you see another acquisition, or at least hunting down an acquisition in your future, or is this the time that you're going to go into of an organic growth
I'd
spike?
say a lot of the things we've done over the last year have cemented for me even further that like we can do a lot organically. Like we are capable of growing organically. So I feel confident in like our ability to do that. So I'd say like right now, like our priority right now is like stabilize, and maximize, right? Now we'll still do deals like opportunistically, but only in our local markets. So like in our New Jersey service area, in our New Hampshire service area, particularly in New Hampshire, we feel like there's a lot of opportunity. But really the acquisitions are almost like playing defense. Like I don't see that as our major lever for growth. It's more of like trying to make sure that our other acquisitive competitors don't just like bulk up in our market. So it's like, hey, if I can spar in that arena, and because the problem is that like these businesses that come up for sale, like the good ones, like a $5 million HVAC company or multi-trade company or whatever, that thing comes up for sale. If it gets picked up by somebody else, it's not going to come back on the market basically forever. It's never going to hit the market again. So and there in the New Hampshire market, there's really only 3 acquisitive players. It's me and 2 others. So we would do a deal to make sure it didn't fall into the hands of the other 2, if we could.
That's nice. I'm grinning at there's you and 2 other major players in Nashville. We have 5 or 6 $100 million companies that we're competing against. So we're trying to just grab a little slice and get big enough to actually acquisition. Yeah. Oh, so you had the best of both worlds. So let me ask. I know we're jumping around a bit because I haven't really got to interview you before, but we've talked about on this podcast before the belief, like, would you rather be a big fish in a small pond or a small fish in a big pond and try to take market share from the big guys, or just own a little market.
Yeah.
And it sounds like you've kind of had a bit of both. Which one? What's your thoughts on that? I'm not even going to preface the question.
It's hard to say. I mean, our New Hampshire market is us being a big fish in a small pond, and our New Jersey market is us being a small fish in a big pond. I think I have more fun being a big fish in a small pond. but I do see, like,
fair enough. Yeah.
If I was going to have, if I have big ambitions for the business, it's like, well, let's say if we were going to build $100 million business in New England, that probably means we have to expand to Massachusetts. Like there just isn't that much work in New Hampshire. There's only one player really larger than I am in New Hampshire, and they do like 40 million total, and I think only 25 of it maybe is in New Hampshire. The rest of it's in Massachusetts and Maine. So, there's a ceiling probably. But again, but if you do hit 30 million in New Hampshire, it's like you are a titan. You know what I mean? which is cool. There's benefit to that.
Yeah.
New Jersey, you're at 30 million, and like people might not even know who you are.
Yeah, because I mean, that's I don't want to say John at 30 million is a big fish in a small pond, but he's kind of in between because he's close enough to that. I think it's Cleveland right there.
Yeah, he's in the
Cincinnati.
market, yeah.
Cleveland? I don't know. Yeah, it's Cleveland. Yeah, that's right. So he's close enough to Cleveland to actually like be the smaller fish in a big pond, but at the same time he grew up like in the small pond, and then the ponds kind of just merged eventually. So it's an interesting question because I don't know anything else from my business. Like we've always had to compete against the big guys. So whether that's good, bad, I mean, it's more, I think, like you said, an ambition thing. Do you want a giant business, or do you want to stay small? Because if you want to stay 3, 5, 6 million, that's a great lifestyle business, but it's better in a big fish, small pond scenario versus 3 to 5 million in a big pond. You are fighting the $100 million company around every bend.
In a small pond, you can probably more comfortably, if you wanted to sit at 6 million, you could probably comfortably sit at 6 million for 50 years. I mean, I've got plenty of competitors that are just like that. But if you're in a big pond like New Jersey or Nashville, $6 million, you get wiped off the face of the planet tomorrow, probably.
Yeah, definitely. We are very scrappy around here because we got to be. So it's fun though. It's definitely fun at the end of the day. Stressful but fun. Great, Rich. Well, I know we're rounding out our time here. So we kind of jumped around this pod. We talked about the one thing that you need to do, or that you feel like
you're in.
I don't even know what the question was per se. It was really like the one business that you're actually in. I think we all came to the same conclusion. Like the biggest area that we need to be in is HVAC installs, doing them correctly.
The problem is you have to do the rest of the business really well in order for HVAC install to come in where you need it.
Yeah, because it flows. It's like a waterfall of maintenance to service to quotes to installs, and it ends up being a numbers game. We talk about a little bit about kind of, hey, my business, your business, big pond, small pond. It's really great to actually get to spend this time with you, because I know we're in a few group chats together, and it's good to actually sit down and
due for it.
Meet face to face. We don't get to do this every day. Internet friends. Well, I hope. Sweet. So if you liked what you heard today, go ahead and head on over to ownedandoperated.com. Sign up for the newsletter. We are hosting a workshop June 4th through the 6th, where we go to John's office and we run through the whole gambit of how to get above 5 million. I know that it has significantly helped out my business. Rich, thank you for heading out today. Where can people find you if they want to hear more? Twitter,
best place to
Instagram,
find me,
Facebook.
and
where are you at?
See my daily thoughts or whatever is Twitter. If you're looking to reach out to me, Twitter as well. Yeah.
Thanks for tuning in to Owned and Operated, the podcast for home service entrepreneurs. If you enjoyed today's episode, please hit the like button and subscribe to the podcast. If you have any questions or topics you'd like us to cover, feel free to reach out. You can find me on Twitter at @WilsonCompanies. I'll see you next time.